Hey everyone, I'm here to help you relax and drift off tonight. If you enjoy using these videos to fall asleep, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more calming content. Share where you're watching from and what time it is for you. I'd love to know. Now settle into a cozy spot, take a deep breath, and let's start unwinding together. Elisanda Miro, Moonvale's herbal healer, wrestled with guilt as more sick fell to the unquiet sickness. By day she tended herbs and brewed tonics. By night she pored over forbidden myths in her late grandmother's journals. One entry caught her eye. Under moonless sky, walk the nightway. Find its hidden bend, and the trail will guide you to the source of any ailment. If she could locate this hidden bend, perhaps she could discover a cure in the ancient heart of the vale, or at least the herb rumored to bloom only where the path loops back upon itself. But to walk the nightway at midnight was to risk never returning. Gathering her courage, Elisanda recruited two companions. Bram, a young woodsman whose starlight bow could guide them through tangled fens, and Alder, the grizzled cartographer who first drew Moonvale's winding lanes. They set out on the eve of the new moon, each bearing talismans of protection. Alder's compass, though its needle spun, Elisanda's silver sickle, and Bram's flint lantern, its glow said to repel wayward spirits. At the trailhead, Alder consulted his map. The nightway ran due east for half a league, then curved north. By the lantern's flicker they set out, only to find after 20 paces, the trail branching. One fork west, another north, neither in the map's telling. Bram lit fresh tinder. The lanthorn's glow pushed back shadows, and they chose the northern fork, believing the map wrong. They pressed on through a stand of birches whose pods whispered in the wind. 20 minutes in, they reached a clearing, and again the trail diverged. One path led uphill toward moon-dappled stones, the other down into mist. Alder tore at his map in confusion. No branch existed here by day. Bram, the path is shifting. We must mark our steps. They hailed the nightway with chalk lines on stones, knots in grasses and twigs across the dirt. Yet each time they circled back to a fork, their markings lay smudged or erased, replaced by new signs. Elisanda clutched her grandmother's journal. The hidden bend lies where the lost live. Only loss shapes the nightway. She realized that each change responded to their own fears. Bram worried he'd fail his family's hunt. Alder feared his map would vanish from memory. Elisande feared losing another patient. As midnight approached, they stumbled into the Vale of Lost Echoes, a hollow where moonlight pooled like silver water. Their lantern cast no glow here. Shadows clung to them like hungry shapes. In the valley's heart lay an ancient stone arch, half collapsed and moss-laced, beyond which the path seemed to vanish entirely. Under the arch, the air hummed with distant cries, the echo of a weeping child, a mother's soft lullaby, the clank of a blacksmith's hammer. Each sound tugged at Elisanda's heart. She'd lost her own son to the sickness. Her vision blurred with tears. Bram reached for her, while Alder's compass spun free. Drawing a steadying breath, Elisande whispered into the dark, "I will not lose you or any other soul." With that vow, the earth beneath the arch shivered, and the nightway reformed as a single beaten track, glimmering with moonlit dew. They stepped onto it, hearts forging hope from resolution. The glowing trail led uphill to a hidden grove, where dark purple blossoms shimmered beneath rotting logs. Elisanda recognized the herb of lunafrost, whose petals stilled fevers in legend. She knelt and gathered its blooms, each petal luminous as starlight, though her hands trembled. As she rose, the nightway glowed brighter, forming a circle around the grove, and at its center stood a figure in silvery mist, the wraith of the nightway itself. Its hollow eyes regarded them, a silent question. Elisanda stepped forward and laid the lunafrost bloom at its feet. For my son and all who suffer. The wraith bowed its head, and the shimmering trail pulsed once, then turned beneath their feet eastward, back toward Moonvale. They followed the nightway home as the eastern sky flushed rose and gold. With each step, the path solidified into its daylight bounds. The birches, the rutted ground, the fort at the fen. They emerged at dawn at the village edge, carrying woven bouquets of Luna frost, its petals faintly glowing. Elder healers gathered, and Ellie-san distilled the herb's essence. Within days, fevers broke, and patients once teetering on death's brink recovered beneath her care. Bram's family rejoiced to see the packable meat cured of sickness, and Alder's map regained its charts, now enriched with the Nightway's secret turn. The Nightway's magic remained. For those who walked by day, it ran as a simple country road. But by new moon nights, lantern bearers still ventured forth, carrying chalk and talismans, hearts open to their own fears and hopes. They followed the shimmering trail, discovered the hidden bend, and gathered Luna Frost's healing petals, renewing the bond between Moonvale and the grieving wraith of Umbra Wood that shaped the Nightway's shift. And whenever the moon hid her face, Iris's journal lay open in the healer's cottage, beside Bram's waiting bow and Alder's compass, reminders that a road need not lead forward alone. Sometimes to heal the past, one must circle back into memory's gentle turn. Rowan Holt had watched the bell's powers ebb for 30 years. Once it tolled clear across the valley, now its voice barely carried beyond the plaza. Young Mayor Anna Theron, determined to modernize Veridale, proposed replacing the Bell of Truth with a clock tower, more practical, she argued, for daily commerce. At the council meeting, funding was shifted. Rowan stood to protest, voice quavering. "The bell binds our city to honesty. Remove it, and Veridale loses its soul." Mayor Theron smiled. "Sentiment doesn't feed our people. Progress does no lie escape the mayor's lips, so the bell remained silent, no toll whatsoever. Yet by evening, broken goods in the marketplace soared, rumors swirled unchecked, and an artisan accused her apprentice of theft without evidence. That night, when the apprentice wept beneath the bell, its hollow dome resonated once, though no enchantment should remain. The villagers awoke in panic. The bell had tolled on its own. Next morning, Rowan summoned his old friend, a scholar of arcane jurisprudence, Ilyana Greer. She arrived with grim news from her studies. The Bell of Truth's magic required 3 conditions to function: mortal faith in its power, an honest declaration of its purpose, and the chant of the keeper at sunrise and sunset. Without all 3, the spell fractured. Mayor Theron refused to restore ritual. She chafed at superstition. "We need industry, not incantations." Ilyana pressed Rowan. "We must rekindle the city's faith, government, and people alike. Heal the bell before truth dies." Rowan nodded, resolve steeled. He and Ilyana would undertake a festival of truth, an Eid of Verity, to remind citizens of their pledge. Forsaking clockwork plans, Mayor Theron conceded to a month-long festival of Verity. Banners proclaimed, "Speak true, live free." Artisans crafted tapestries depicting Veridale's founding. Poets recited ancient oaths. In the plaza, a great amphitheater stood beneath the silent bell, awaiting the truth-affirming rites. At dawn, Rowan led a procession under the bell, chanting, "By light of day and breath of night, let truth ring forth in silver might." Ilyana recorded each word. The people watched, murmuring the chant in unity. Yet that evening, a traitor boasting of hidden profits spat falsehoods to win favor, and the bell struck once, echoing like thunder. Gasps rose from the crowd. The traitor paled and fled. The bell's voice, brittle from disuse, trembled, but rang again and again as other lies surfaced in the hushed plaza. With each toll, new lies surfaced, whispered deceptions between merchants, secret bribes among officials, rumors of clandestine affairs. Veridale's gilded veneer cracked. Citizens turned on one another in shame and anger. The apprentice, once accused, was exonerated publicly, but his spirit was marred by betrayal. Even Mayor Theron's own pledge unraveled. She had promised affordable grain, but secretly sold it off to fund her clock tower project. Rowan watched the turmoil with heavy heart. "We've let our secrets fester," he lamented to Ilyana. "Ilyana, better that secrets hide in shadows than fester to poison us all. We must guide them to healing." They convened a council of truth. Each citizen could speak before the bell to confess a lie, and in doing so be freed of its toll. In return, the community would offer aid to those wronged. Under the silver dawn, the plaza filled for confessions. One by one, citizens stepped beneath the bell. The trader admitted his false claims and offered restitution to customers. The councilman revealed his bribes and returned the funds. Even Mayor Theron confessed her deception and withdrew her clock tower proposal, vowing to fund the bell's restoration instead. Each confession was met with a single toll, this time clear and resonant, the bell's voice healing the wound. With every ring, the shadow of falsehood lifted, revealing empathy and goodwill. Rowan and Ilyana oversaw the repairs, polishing the bell's surface, reforging cracked supports, chanting the incantation each dawn and dusk. The bell's ring grew stronger, carrying across rooftops and fields. By month's end, Veridale emerged transformed. The bell tolled at dawn and dusk once more, not as a warning, but as a vow, the vow of truth. The Festival of Verity concluded with a symposium on integrity, where merchants pledged honest dealings and officials adopted transparent governance. Mayor Theron stood before the bell, tears in her eyes. "I pledge progress over principle and nearly lost our way. Let this bell be our guide. I vow, with every toll, to speak truth." The bell chimed 12 times, each note a promise. Years passed and Veridale prospered as the city of candor. Travelers marveled at the morning and evening bells, reminding citizens that truth was a living contract. Rowan, now aged and gray, still climbed the tower to tend the enchantment. Ilyana's grandchildren recited the chants in chorus, ensuring the bell's magic thrived. And on misted nights when distant tolls drifted across the valley, villagers would pause, hands over heart, remembering that a single lie can wither trust, but a bell's clear toll can renew it for all time. Thus ends the tale of the Bell of Truth's toll, an instrument of justice, a beacon of honesty, and a living testament that in truth we find our common purpose and our shared humanity. Rowan Vance taught folklore at the University of Evermere and specialized in strange ways, roads and paths said to bind space and time. When he discovered a tattered travel journal mentioning a road of echoes in Evermere County, he couldn't resist the lure. He set out at dawn with only his satchel of notebooks, a compass that always pointed home, and a battered lantern. By mid-afternoon, he found the unassuming track. Its first milepost read simply, "Memory Road 1," though no others appeared. Undeterred, Rowan walked on, noting soil composition and tree species. Nothing unusual, but as twilight fell, he could almost hear the hush of voices on the wind. At the first bend, Rowan glimpsed a flash of childhood, the clap of his father's hands in applause. Rowan's own small grin as he learned to ride a bicycle. Heart quickening, he checked his watch. Only minutes had passed, but the road ahead seemed to shimmer, as though wet with morning dew, and the trees' shadows welled into shapes he almost recognized. He pressed forward, curiosity trumping caution. With each step, another memory unfurled. His mother's lullaby beside his hospital bed after a high fever, the first pages of a book he wrote at 10, lost to a spilled cup of ink. Rowan paused, recording fragments in his notebook, then realized he'd written not what he saw, but what he felt. The road had already begun to shape his thoughts. Further along, the horizon split into dusk and dream. Rowan passed a lone apple tree heavy with fruit too bright for the season. Beneath it stood a younger version of himself, hammer in hand, hammering a sign he read as home, only to abandon it at last stroke. Rowan's throat tightened. Years ago, he had walked away from his family farm to chase academic glory. He followed that younger self to the edge of the road, but the boy vanished into mist before Rowan could speak. In that mist murmured a question. "Why did you leave?" Rowan's compass spun wildly. Shame and longing roiled in his chest. He set down his notebook and whispered, "For knowledge, for success." The path rippled. The tree's bark softened to moss. Rowan realized the road demanded truth. As the moon rose, Rowan reached milepost 5, though he had counted none. The road curved back on itself, beckoning. He followed into a valley of silvered grass, each stalk reflecting starlight like memory's tears. Here the road looped twice more, and each loop replayed a regret. 1. The broken promise. Rowan saw himself as a young man, promising his fiancée he'd return by spring, then postponing for a conference, losing her to distance and silence. 2. The lost friendship. He witnessed his own laughter as he abandoned a childhood friend in need, choosing ambition over loyalty. With each replay, Rowan's heart ached. He felt compelled to set matters right, yet his presence alone could not alter what was. The road knew that, and so it offered another loop. On the 4th loop, Rowan stumbled and fell to his knees before a blackened oak. Its trunk was scarred with his name, and the name of his lost friend, carved together. The road's surface glowed beneath his boots, forming letters. Remember and be remembered. Tears blurred Rowan's vision. He laid his palms on the oak's bark and spoke aloud every regret, every apology unspoken. "I'm sorry I left you, Father. I'm sorry I broke my promise to Elin. I'm sorry I abandoned you, Daniel." With each apology, the road beneath him softened. The mileposts ahead glowed. He rose, unburdened. As dawn's first light brushed the canopy, the road straightened back toward his starting point. Rowan emerged onto the county lane beside his car, his compass steady, his heart finally quiet. In his satchel, his notebook now bore not detailed observations of soil and flora, but a record of truths faced. He left the memory road behind, its cartwater track fading into grass. Back at the university, Rowan published Echoes of the Forgotten Path, weaving his personal journey with folkloric analysis. Students and fellow scholars read with awe. Rover Mere's memory road had been half myth, half mirror for the soul. Rowan returned each year at autumn equinox to the forest's edge, placing a small wooden sign inscribed, "Walk with care. This path returns only what you seek." And late at night, if one listens to the wind among the hawthorns, they say you can hear Rowan's footsteps, steady and sure, echoing not with regret, but with remembrance. Marjorie's grandmother, Edith Livermore, had died before Marjorie's birth. Family lore said she was an artist who painted grief and stitched sorrow, but no photographs survived. Over the coming days, the doll remembered more. In the night nursery, Marjorie awoke to hear lullabies drifting from the mantel and saw the doll's head turn toward the cradle. A framed photograph of Marjorie's infant mother, Clara, glowed for a heartbeat, then vanished. The tea rose incident. When Marjorie spilled tea on the doll's dress, the stain shifted overnight into the shape of a small rose, identical to the brooch Edith wore in old family portraits. Grandfather's sorrow. Her elderly grandfather came to visit. He paused before the doll, eyes watering. "That was Margaret's," he whispered. "Your great aunt. She gave it to Edith after the war." Each revelation tugged threads of family history from the loom of time. Marjorie could not resist opening the doll's locket. Inside lay a tiny painted portrait of a young woman in a floral gown. Edith herself, mustache of a secret sorrow on her perfect lips. Carved on the locket's reverse was a date, April 12th, 1917. The day Edith's fiancé, Charles Harrow, died in Flanders Fields. When Marjorie touched the portrait, she heard Edith's voice whisper, "I wore your heart in this locket, and it broke when you left." Tears blurred her vision. The doll's glass eyes glistened with unshed tears of their own. Determined to understand, Marjorie visited the town archive. There she discovered Edith's war diary, written in looping ink. April 13th, 1917. He's gone, and I clutch his locket, my only proof he loved me. I carve a companion for my sorrow, a doll of pale promise to carry our memories, so I never forget. By candlelight that evening, Marjorie held the doll and read the diary aloud. The doll's fingers twitched, its head inclined in mourning. In the mirror behind her, she saw Edith's reflection beside her own, an echo of a grief that spanned a century. From then on, the doll never left Marjorie's side. On sleepless nights, it murmured lines from Edith's poems. It guided her hand as she restored the family's neglected needlework, delicate floss recreating patterns Edith had begun. But the more Marjorie learned, the heavier the doll grew, an heirloom of unrelenting sorrow, its porcelain form a vessel for generations' regrets. Her friends noticed her pale gaze and trembling hands. Yet Marjorie could not abandon the doll, nor forget the lives it carried within its seams. One storm-whipped evening, Marjorie sat in the candlelit parlor, clutching the doll. She began, voice quavering. "I know now why you came to me." She placed the doll on a low table and opened Edith's diary to its final entry. May 5th, 1918. The war is over, yet my heart remains at Flanders Fields. I gift this doll to my unborn child, that she may know my sorrow and my hope for joy beyond grief. Marjorie realized the doll's purpose, not to hold sorrow forever, but to carry it across time so it could be healed. She lifted the doll to her heart. "You've remembered every owner, but now I release you." Tears fell as she closed the diary and set the doll beside the hearth. The storm's thunder rolled like an exhale. The doll's eyes glowed with soft light, and Marjorie heard a final whisper. "Thank you. Remember me with love." The next morning, Marjorie placed the doll and the diary in the town museum, where they became part of an exhibit on lives shaped by war and loss. Visitors, some elderly, some children, placed flowers beside the locket and read Edith's words. Marjorie watched as grief lifted, replaced by understanding and empathy. In her own home, Marjorie stitched a new doll, bright yarn, smiling face, carrying threads of hope instead of sorrow. She hung it in her parlor, reminder that memories endure best when they guide us forward, not hold us back. Years later, guests to the museum occasionally reported hearing a soft lullaby drifting from the exhibit. Then a gentle sigh, as though the doll's new owner whispered comfort from beyond the glass case. Researchers found that visitors stood longer by the locket's portrait, their faces touched by a century's grace. And so the doll of whispering threads fulfilled its promise, to remember its past owners, to heal their hidden wounds, and to weave sorrow and hope into the living tapestry of memory, so that no heart need ever bear its past alone. Iris Marlowe was a scholar of folklore and the uncanny, lecturing at Graymere University. When she inherited a battered journal from her mentor, Dr. Preston Farrow, detailing his final expedition into Umberwood, she became obsessed. His last entry read, "Tonight I heard my own shadow call my name and saw it reach for my throat. I fear the shadows here wish to sup on living flesh." Determined to prove or disprove the legend, Iris gathered a small team. Jared, a gifted tracker, Myra, an herbalist versed in protective folk remedies, and Thomas, a photographer eager for spectral evidence. At dusk on the autumn equinox, they stood at Umberwood's edge, hearts pounding beneath the low gray sky. They made camp in a battered clearing, just inside the tree line. Myra hung wreaths of rue and yarrow above their tents. Jared staked lines of salt across the perimeter. Thomas set up his camera tripod with infrared film. As the sun sank, Umberwood's hush grew heavy. No bird song, no breeze, only the shiver of anticipation. At the stroke of midnight, Iris tested the legends. She stepped from the firelight into the moonlit gloom and cast her shadow on the mossy ground. As she watched, the shadow quivered, elongating, detaching, emerging as a dark shape that rose on two legs. Tomas's shutter clicked on its own. Iris froze as the shadow walked upright toward her, gesturing with distorted fingers. In a trembling whisper, she spoke her own name. The shape paused, flickered, and dissolved into the trees. Behind her, Tomas's voice cracked. "Look at the footage." On the screen, 4 human silhouettes, one for each of them, paced restlessly around the camp, though no one walked there. Over the next days, the living shadows grew bolder. Jared, on watch, heard footsteps pattering at his tent and opened the flap, only to find his own shadow crouched on the ground, its eyes twin hollows glinting. When he swung his lantern, the shape vanished, but Jared woke hours later drained and pale, as if the shadow had siphoned his blood. Myra found her reflection in a pool of rainwater, face turned to hers, but her shadow double crouched behind her reflection, licking its lips. She fled, abandoning herbs and lantern, only to return at dawn to find her protective wreaths shredded. Thomas's camera recorded the group's laughter around the fire, but when he played it back, the laughter was tinged with a second, deeper chuckle, the stones themselves mocking them. One night, Iris gathered her friends around the embers. "The journal mentions a ritual," she said, drawing out Dr. Farrow's tattered notes. "To bind the shadows, one must acknowledge the desire they embody, fear, guilt, regret, and offer it willingly, naming it under the moon's eye." Jared bristled. "We'll speak our darkest shame," Myra swallowed. "If it stops them." They nodded, and as the fire fell to embers, Iris spoke first. "I fear I never lived up to my mentor's faith." The dark shapes circling them halted, flickering like candle flames. Jared confessed to betrayal. Myra regretted a life's promise broken. Thomas owned his envy of those with honest joy. Each time they spoke, the forest stilled, and their shadow doubles bowed as if in sorrow, then dissolved into drifting ash. With the living shadows quelled, the forest's hush softened to breezes through golden leaves. They ventured deeper by dawn's light to the heart of Umberwood, a glade where starlight pierced the canopy, illuminating a circle of ringdells. In its center grew an ancient yew, its trunk carved with binding runes. Iris consulted the journal. This tree anchored the shadows to the world. To seal the forest's phantom, they must carve their own names into its bark, pledging to honor both light and dark within themselves. Each carved initials: Iris M, Jared T, Myra L, Thomas S. The runes glowed briefly, sealing the promise. When they emerged from Umberwood at sunrise, the forest behind them glowed in autumn gold. No lingering footsteps haunted their path. No whispering echoes trailed in the morning air. The living shadows had returned to their rightful place, mere darkness cast by tree and bough. Back in Marwick, Iris published Umberwood's Echo, sharing her team's story and the ritual to honor fear and hope, lest one's shadow take flight. Villagers carried yew wood wards and recited names of loved and lost under twilight skies. Years later, Iris stood at Umberwood's edge with her own apprentice. Beneath the now enshrined yew, she placed a small mirror carved with the binding runes. Here we witness both sun and shade, and walk in balance unafraid. Each equinox, students and villagers gather in the glade, speaking truth to shadow and binding their own names to the living wood, ensuring that in Umberwood, darkness lives only as a reminder of the light, and no soul shadow ever escapes its own self again. Dr. Lena Harrow, a climatologist studying extreme weather phenomena, arrived at Blackmore Vale in early December. The Vale's bone-white windswept land intrigued her, an isolated laboratory for rare atmospheric events. She rented a small cottage on the moor's edge, its hearth well stocked with peat, and set up sensors around the valley: barometers, hygrometers, and thermal imagers. Villagers eyed her warily at the Rusty Oak Inn. Innkeeper Mavis: "You're far from home, miss. They say the frost fog's been heavier these past years." Lena, smiling: "All the more reason to study it. I'd sleep sound if I knew it'd chill the air at 2 below, not freeze it solid." Mavis glanced at the moor's horizon where storm clouds churned. "We lost 4 last year, caught out at night. Marked their names on the memorial tree." She pointed to a blade-edged iron cross beside the inn. Lena felt a chill at the names carved there, but dismissed it as superstition. On the 3rd night, at precisely 2:17 a.m., Lena's alarm bells rang, humidity spiked, temperature plummeted. She peered through her cottage window. A pale gray bank encroached on the peat, swallowing fence posts and lamplight. Grabbing her coat and thermal camera, she ventured outside. The frost fog's edge glistened with hung moisture that froze to her eyelashes. Lena raised the camera. The world beyond showed, nothing but featureless white. She held her breath, noting the temperature. Minus 12 degrees Celsius and still falling. Her pen froze to her notebook. As she turned to retreat, a flash on her camera caught movement behind her. A figure stumbling in the mist. Lena called out, "Lena, over here, this way!" Behind her, the figure lurched forward, then collapsed. Lena raced toward them, but missed the steps. Hand outstretched, too late. The figure's head lay back, jaw open in frozen terror, thick ice glazing their face. Lena's heart seized. The frost fog's pulse rasped in her ears like a death knell. Lena staggered back, breath coming in crystalline clouds. She hit her sensors. The fog's core extended onto the moor faster than predicted, nearly 200 meters per minute. She jammed her instruments into her pack and ran toward the cottage, stumbling over frozen tussocks. Behind her, the fog's edge flickered with spectral shapes, flashing limbs of past victims, trailing their phantom echoes. She made the door just as the bank broke into red-orange lamplight. Inside, she slammed it shut and lit every burner she had, fire dancing in lumps of oil and peat. The cottage shuddered as the fog struck the windows, coating them with frost. Lena watched in terror as her own breath crystallized in the air, each inhalation heavier than the last. Her recorder beeped, temperature minus 18 degrees Celsius and continuing to drop. Lena's teeth rattled. She pressed a palm to the hearth, warmth quickly sinking into cold. Desperate, she grabbed her coat and ran back outside, seeking offset readings and ground heat beyond the fog's perimeter, armed only with data and doomed determination. Minutes later, Lena found the figure again, frozen solid like a marble statue. She circled away from the fog, noting the ground temperature. Minus 5 degrees Celsius, only a dozen meters beyond the frost's edge. She stowed the camera near the corpse and skirted the bank to reach safety. But stepping back into the cottage's circle of warmth triggered the fog's final assault. A shriek of wind as icy barbs infiltrated every crack. Inside, a piece of firewood caught. Embers flared, then snuffed. Lena's lantern sputtered, its flame crystallizing. She lunged for her instruments, but froze. The digital display flickered to unreadable blue squares. Her breath came in pinpricks. Her vision blurred. She sank to the floor, her body's warmth seeping away. In the last seconds, Lena marveled. Cold had become shapeless. She was unraveling, turning into the very air she studied. Her final thought, at least I will join the fog's eternal flow. At sunrise, Mavis stepped onto her porch and surveyed the frost fog's aftermath. On the moor lay two frozen figures, the stranger and the scientist, both captured in mid-stride. Their feet pointed toward the moor's center, where the frost fog's remains lay in wisps, dissolving under the weak sun. Mavis knelt by one. Beneath the ice, etched in the stranger's parka, was a map of the moor showing a dark shaft, the old Blackmore mine, sealed for a century after a methane blast. Above the mine's shaft, the frost fog was densest. Perhaps miners' spirits cried on icy breath, or a leak in the old ventilation released frost-poison gas. Mavis whispered, "Rest now, and let the veil remember." By winter's end, the bodies thawed and were laid to rest in the churchyard, beneath simple stones marking their names. Unknown Stranger and Dr. Lena Harrow. The villagers chiseled a new warning into the inn's wooden sign. "Beware the frost fog, it knows no mercy." Years passed, some blame folklore, others blame subterranean gas. But every December, when the temperature dipped below -10 degrees Celsius and the sky lay moonless, the Vale folk barred their doors at midnight, listening for the faintest hiss on the wind, the first breath of the frost fog, and prayed the dawn would find them safe and unfrozen once more. Mara pulled up the gravel drive as raven-winged clouds scudded overhead. The iron gates protested on their hinges. The gardens beyond were choking with weeds. The front door's oak panels were swollen with damp, but gave way when she pressed. Inside, the air was stale, coated with dust and sea fog. Her footsteps crunched on shards of plaster and fractured tile. She set up her equipment in the entry hall. Digital recorders, decibel meters, contact mics taped to banisters. The house was silent, eerily so. No gull's cry, no wind sigh. Mara tapped her foot sharply. The tap reverberated once, twice, then dozens of times, trailing off over nearly a minute. She frowned at her meter. The echoes persisted long after her foot had returned to stillness. Mara into her notebook. Tap at 65 decibels. Echo persists for T approximately 58 seconds. This cannot be natural reverberation. Volume too high, decay too slow. That night, she slept in the guest suite on the second floor. As midnight approached, she awakened to pacing footsteps on the landing. Slow even, approaching. She froze, listening. The meters on the nightstand flickered. The echo of steps circled her door continuously for some 20 seconds, then ceased. Mara's heart hammered. At first light, Mara began mapping the house's acoustics. She walked the corridors, tapping at measured intervals, noting the echo time and intensity. In the library, her taps returned with a hollow metallic ring, echoes layered as if dozens of footsteps ran simultaneously. In the dining hall, a single footstep produced a choral cacophony of sound. She cross-checked measurements against the architectural blueprints she'd uncovered in the study. Walls padded with horsehair plaster should absorb sound, not prolong it. Ceilings were vaulted southwood beams, not reflective stone. Something else was at work. While reviewing her recordings in the parlor, she heard, barely, a soft footstep behind her. She spun, but the room lay empty. Her maps showed no human presence. She played back the audio. Beneath her own foot taps, a second set of steps marched in perfect counterpoint, invisible yet unmistakable. That evening, Mara placed vibration sensors beneath the carpeting on the third-floor landing, intending to capture any ghostly footsteps. At 2:17 a.m., the sensors triggered. She rushed upstairs with her recorder. In the darkness, the hallway stretched before her like a yawning mouth. She pressed record and stepped out into the corridor. Her boots echoed once, then dozens of other footsteps joined in, marching away toward the turret stairs. Mara pursued, heart thrumming, only to find the stairs empty. Yet as she turned back, the echo of endless steps chased her all the way down. Reviewing the playback, she noticed under the ambient footsteps a faint whisper. "Stay with us." The voice sounded male and hollow. Determined to confront the source, Mara climbed to the attic at dawn. The hatch scraped open on rusted hinges. Inside, trunks and moth-eaten draperies lay forgotten. But on the floor, she found a single pair of scuffed leather boots, size 7, standing side by side, as though someone had shed them and stepped away. The boots shook with phantom life, and when Mara tapped one heel, the leather sprang outward, echoing a dozen steps, as though the boots themselves walked. Suddenly, the attic lights flickered. The boots walked toward her, pant legs of an invisible figure rippling in dust motes, then stopped. Mara's voice trembled. "Who are you?" The attic remained silent. The boots retreated down the hall. Tap, 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 until the echoes died just beyond the hatch. Mara realized the house preserved footsteps of all who'd ever crossed its threshold, prisoners of their own echoes. To free them, she needed to break the loop, replace the reflective surfaces with absorbent material until echoes decayed normally. Over the next days, she draped burlap over walls, unlaid carpets returned, and floorboards she sanded and applied acoustic underlay. She placed absorbing panels beneath each stair tread. It was backbreaking work, her muscles sore, but she persisted. That night she tested again. Dressed in old work boots, she tapped down the hall. Once. The sound echoed bleakly, then faded in under 3 seconds. Mara exhaled in relief, but the hidden speakers of the house, far beneath her hearing, continued their soft procession. She rigged her recorders near the attic. At midnight, faint footsteps began, but this time they slowed, weakened, and finally stopped. At dawn's first light, Mara ascended to the attic. The solitary boots lay unmoving on the floor. She lifted one boot, dust dry, no tremor, no echo. She tapped it gently against the floorboard, one soft thud, then silence. Mara opened her journal. All footsteps silenced. Hollow Spire's souls released. She packed her gear. 6 months later, Redbrook Manor, renamed Hollow Spire in honor of its quieted curse, opened its doors as a community center. Children's laughter filled the halls. Neighbors gathered in the old parlor for concerts. Researchers used the spaces for sound studies. Yet never a stray echo lured them into dread. Mara returned once, tapping a borrowed boot in the empty corridor. Its single click, the only sound, promptly absorbed by her acoustic dampers. Walking toward the front door, she left footprints in dust, temporary marks on polished stone, reminding her that every step, once freed from echo, truly fades into the moment. And on quiet nights, if one listened at Hollow Spire's threshold, the silence rang with peace, proof that some echoes must be laid to rest, and that a footstep once lost can finally find its peace and stillness. Eleanor Vance grew up in her uncle's mirror workshop, where polished glass and burnished steel were shaped into frames and blades. Her uncle, Master Grafton, warned her never to peer too long into his looking-glass spheres at night. Master Grafton, some reflections are windows, child, and some are doors, ones you can't slam shut behind you. Yet Eleanor's curiosity burned. When Master Grafton fell ill one autumn eve, his final words were whispered in fevered hush. "Find the path, save the hollow." Alone, Eleanor dusted off the old spheres and peered into one by the lamplight. In its surface, she saw not the workshop, but a moonlit trail snaking into the forest, lined with trees whose branches wove overhead like cathedral vaults. She turned, heart pounding, to find no path outside. Her uncle's charge and her own longing propelled her forward. She must follow the trail and discover where it led. Eleanor stepped outside as the moon climbed high. its silver face mirrored on Black Mirror's glassy surface. In the water, the path shimmered, stones glowing faintly beneath its surface, weaving around lily pads and reeds. She plunged her wooden boots into the shallows and followed the trail's reflection as though it were dry land. Each step rippled the water, yet the reflected stones stayed in place, guiding her deeper into Silverwood. The air filled with night-blooming honeysuckle scent, and fireflies clustered in glowing arcs above the invisible stones. At the forest's edge, the reflection led under an ancient oak. She felt, rather than heard, a low echo, a soft voice calling her name. Heart trembling, she pressed on. The deeper Eleanor went, the more the path shimmered in unexpected reflections. The polished blade of her uncle's old sledgehammer, the gleam of a puddle on a fallen log, the metal rim of her lantern. At each step, the reflection spoke, a memory brought to life in ghostly tableau. Her father teaching her to fish at dawn, her mother's lullaby in the candlelit nursery, her uncle's patient hand shaping glass. Tears blurred her vision as she realized the path did more than guide through trees. It wove together moments she cherished, illuminating the bonds that formed the hollow's heart. But with each memory shown, she felt a tug, a whisper that she might live within those mirrored moments, never to return. After what felt like hours, Eleanor emerged into a clearing lit by moonbeams. At its center stood a pond larger than Blackmere, its surface like polished obsidian. In its depths flickered countless reflections, her own and those of every villager whose name she knew. At the pond's shore, a stone dais bore 3 mirrors, one cracked, one tarnished, one clear. An inscription read, "To walk the path is to gaze within. One mirror for grief, one for sin, one for kin." Eleanor set her 3 keepsakes before the mirrors, a broken locket from her childhood, a dented silver coin she once stole, and her uncle's silver ring. She gazed into the cracked mirror, her grief-torn face, tears unceasing, then soft acceptance of loss. She wiped her eyes and turned to the tarnished mirror, her guilt for small betrayals, then remorse, and finally the resolve to act with kindness. At last, she faced the clear mirror. Her uncle's ring glowed on her finger, and she saw not only herself, but the village united by shared history and hope. With the final mirror's truth acknowledged, the path's reflections brightened. Stones emerged on the pond's surface, glowing clear enough to walk upon. Eleanor stepped across, watching her footprints in the glassy water. At the opposite shore lay a small shrine of driftwood and silver bark. There, on a mossy plinth, stood a single mirror, oval and framed with living vines. In its glass bloomed the reflection of Ravenswood, the mirror maker's workshop, her uncle's frail figure leaning on a cane. Eleanor whispered, "I have learned your secret. The path appears only in reflection, to show us what has been and guide us to what must be." She clasped the mirror's frame and closed her eyes. Eleanor awoke at the workshop's threshold as dawn's first rays filtered through dusty windows. Her uncle lay on a low cot, breathing easy, his fever gone. By his side stood the village elders, having arrived overnight. "Master Grafton," weak smile, "the path led you back, child. You have saved the Hollow, not by running from the past, but by understanding it." Eleanor hugged him, tears of relief and joy mingling. The elders knelt, offering gifts of reclaimed memories, a tapestry of past festivals, a bound chronicle of the Hollow's history, in a small vial labeled Mirror Essence, liquid starlight to polish any surface to reveal hidden paths. In the years that followed, Eleanor became the new keeper of reflections. Each full moon, villagers came to the workshop with polished objects, mirrors, blades, bowls, and gazed into them to walk the path of memory for themselves. They returned with renewed purpose, mending old rifts, sharing untold stories, and forging deeper bonds. And on quiet nights when the moons aligned, the looking-glass path shimmered once more on Black Mirror's surface. An invitation to those who know its secret, that sometimes only through reflection can we find the way forward. Marisol Hawk, a scholar of ancient lineages, arrived on the eve of the equinox. She carried a leather satchel brimming with tomes of genealogy, scrolls of old prophecies, and a single prized heirloom, a jade pendant carved with the rune of memory. Determined to prove that Whisperwood's murmurs preserved the true names of all who had walked the land, she stepped beneath the forest's arched canopy at dusk. The air fell silent as she passed the tree line. Only the crunch of dead leaves beneath her boots broke the hush. Marisol raised the jade pendant to her lips and whispered, "Grant me sight of what has been forgotten." A soft rustle answered, leaves trembling as though the forest drew breath. Marisol pressed deeper beneath the gathering gloom. An ancient cedar, its trunk split by lightning centuries past, loomed ahead. Its bark was scarred with runes too eroded to read. She halted, heart racing, when a single name drifted from its boughs, Aurelia of the Lost Vale. Marisol's hand trembled on her satchel. Aurelia of the Lost Vale was a name she knew. Her grandmother's grandmother, said to vanish into these woods long ago. The trees whispered again, "Return our debt." Marisol's pulse quickened. The forest did not merely speak, it beckoned. Night fell as Marisol pressed on. Each step through the dense undergrowth brought fresh whispers. Thanser the wise, Elowen the betrayer, the stranger who saved the north. By her lantern's flicker, she scribbled each name into her journal. Yet as she wrote, the words on the page glowed faintly, and then faded, as though stolen by the forest itself. Marisol realized each name cost her memory of someone she loved, her childhood tutor's face, the caress of her mother's hand, the echo of her father's laughter. Panicked, she pressed the jade rune, begging for release. Instead, the whispering swelled into a chorus. "We need our names returned." Marisol staggered backward. The forest demanded she restore what it gave. Before her stood a clearing ringed with standing stones carved into leaf shapes. In the center lay a stone basin filled with water still as glass. Marisol approached, setting down her satchel. 1,000 names drifted on the breeze. She realized the basin was a ledger, an archive awaiting her offerings. Gingerly, she spoke the first name she had heard, Aurelia of the Lost Vale. As the words left her lips, a silver leaf drifted from the stones and settled in the water, inscribed with Aurelia's full name and lineage. The forest exhaled, and Marisol felt her memories of her grandmother's grandmother flood back, as vivid as waking. She continued with each name, murmuring them in turn. Each leaf surfaced, sank, and dissolved, and in exchange her stolen memories returned. But as the basin's surface stilled, Marisol sensed the forest watched with ancient patience. Only 2 names remained ungiven, the final leaf and the one she faced in the mirror of water. The basin shimmered, revealing the name, Marisol Hawk. Her blood ran cold. The forest did not seek only its ancient dead. It sought her to bind her name to its roots. She stumbled back, but the standing stone's runes glowed brightly, echoing 3 stern notes of ancient mourning. With trembling voice, she addressed the basin. "Take all the names you wish, but not mine." She set the jade pendant atop the basin's lip, its rune catching the moonlight. "Our debt is then settled," she whispered. The basin rippled once. A leaf bearing Marisol's name fluttered free, but the rune on the jade pendant flared and severed the leaf's stem. It drifted harmlessly to the forest floor. The basin's water stilled. The runes dimmed. The whispering ceased. At dawn, Marisol emerged from Whisperwood, pendants and journal empty, yet her heart full of memories. She carried no names of other souls. Those remained safely archived in the forest's ancient stones. But her family's legacy shone clear as ever. The sun rose on the clearing behind her, and the whisperwood drew its breath once more into silent vigil. Marisol returned to her studies with newfound humility. She published her findings, not a list of stolen ancestries, but a testament to the living forest's quiet guardianship of memory. Once each season, she returned to the ringed stones by moonlight, offering her own whispered name in gratitude. Marisol Hawk, keeper of my own story. The forest responded in hushed approval, leaves trembling in the gentle breeze. And so the whisperwood remained, tending its ancient ledger, whispering names of forgotten souls and honoring those brave enough to hear, remember, and above all, protect the delicate tapestry of memory itself. Aaron Talvane was a scholar of lost histories, his mind burdened by both wonder and sorrow. His wife, Nessa, had vanished beneath the waves of the Sapphire Sea 2 years past. No wreckage, no body, no trace. Each day he awoke hoping for her return. Each night he found only emptiness. When a tattered pamphlet arrived by courier, describing the bazaar's next appearance, Aaron saw a whisper of hope. Perhaps he might claim a memory of Nessa's voice, or barter for the one fragment that might guide him to her fate. On the eve of the twin moons' alignment, Aaron set out from the port of Chemish, crossing dunes under star-pinned sky. His heart pounded with anticipation and dread, trading his own memories for new ones, to find a path to what was lost. As the moons rose full and opposite, 2 columns of rose-gold light shimmered on the horizon. Aaron hurried toward them and found the bazaar's gates. Immense archways woven of polished bone and mirrored glass, inscribed with shifting runes in no mortal script. Beyond lay a teeming labyrinth of stalls and lanterns, where traders beckoned and whispered, memories of first love, tender, unbroken, regrets of war, bargain price, flavors of home for those who have none. Aaron clutched his satchel of denarii and a small leather pouch of his own memories, tokens he carried to trade, his childhood's festivals, the scent of rain on moss, the laughter of his wife at their wedding feast. He moved deeper into the market, senses dazzled by sights and scents, and the hum of others bartering their very lives' echoes. Aaron's path led him to a stall draped in midnight blue velvet, where an aged woman sat weaving strands of light into a loom of steel. The insignia above read, Mira, weaver of remorse. Mira, voice soft as dusk. What memory do you seek, scholar? Aaron swallowed. I wish to find one memory of my wife, something undeniable, to prove she still lives. Mira studied him with mournful eyes. I can sell you her laughter, her touch, even her final breath as she vanished. But in exchange, I must take something. She held out a silver chalice. A memory of your own choosing. Aaron reached for the chalice and poured in the memory of his first sunrise with Nessa, her hand in his as dawn painted the world gold. Mira's loom glowed as she took the memory and wove a single silver thread she offered him. Drink, and you shall hear her voice once more. Aaron raised the chalice and hesitated, knowing the cost, to lose forever that dawn of love. But longing burned too bright. He drank. Aaron staggered as the chalice's song filled his mind, Nessa's laughter echoing through his bones, her voice murmuring his name, vivid and present. He fell to his knees, tears streaming, but as the echoes faded, he gasped, the memory of that first sunrise gone as though it never was. The dawn's golden light, Nessa's smile at sunrise, vanished from his mind. Clutching the silver thread, he turned away from Mira, her loom humming with threads of countless lost regrets. He pressed onward, desperate to uncover more, to fill the void, yet weighted by his own sacrifice. Aaron wandered through the bazaar, haunted by both loss and the chill of his own erasure. He passed the harvester's stand, where sharp-eyed youths carved shards of memory from travelers' eyes. the chef's cauldron, where flavors of childhood were distilled into amulets of taste, the merchant of shadows, selling nightmares to those who longed to feel anything. By a fountain of mirrored glass, he found a robed figure, the librarian of forgotten tomes. Books lay open on her table, blank pages waiting. Librarian, thumbing a quill, for a fair price, your memories can be inked into these tomes, so they endure beyond the mind's frailty. Aaron considered penning his memories. He could record his childhood, Nessa's laughter, even the taste of her favorite pie. But to have them only as words seemed hollow. He walked on. At the bazaar's heart stood a grand pavilion lit by moonbeams. There, a man cloaked in silver sat beside a pool of liquid night. A sign read, Elias, keeper of lost ones. Elias, you come seeking memories of your wife. Aaron nodded, voice thick. I've paid with my happiest dawn, and still my heart aches. Elias, memories are not commodities. They bind us to the living world. To find your wife, you must journey beyond the bazaar, to your own forgotten resolve. Elias plunged his hand into the pool, drawing out a single droplet of obsidian water. Drink this and wake with clarity of purpose. Seek the Jade Gate in the north. You will find the path to her. Aaron drank. His mind cleared. The hollow ache transformed into a determined fire. Elias vanished, the pool rippled, and moonlight fell like a silent benediction. As the first light of dawn touched the bazaar's mirrored gates, they dissolved into mist. Aaron emerged onto the dunes, memory of the bazaar's stalls lingering like dream dust. In his hand, he held the silver thread and the obsidian droplet, tokens of sacrifice and purpose. He turned north toward the fabled Jade Gate, certain now that memories could be bought and sold. But love and resolve must be earned by one's own heart. Each step through the desert sands was a promise to find Nessa, not by trading what he was, but by forging what he still could be. Years later, Irene Talvain's travels led him to the Jade Gate, a jade arch in a ruined city, where he found Nessa's reflection in the mirrored stones, waiting. They crossed together into a realm beyond memory, where the bazaar's echo faded into silence. Aaron had reclaimed not only his wife's presence, but his own forgotten dawns, knowing that while memories may be bought and sold, only the living heart can reclaim what truly matters. Althea stepped through the iron gates of Ravensbourne Manor on a fog-cloaked morning. She carried her leather satchel, its pockets heavy with notebooks, cameras, and a small silver hand mirror passed down by her grandmother. The caretaker, Ms. Thatcher, shone her through marble halls where statues seemed to watch her, and into the portrait gallery. Ms. Thatcher's voice trembled as she lifted the drape. Please, do not stare too long. Althea smiled politely and uncovered the portrait. Lady Evelina's eyes gleamed in the lamplight. Althea raised her notebook to transcribe the artist's signature, S. Ravensbourne, 1782, but paused as Evelina's gaze met hers. Althea returned to her chambers at dusk, mind abuzz with curiosity. She set out her mirror to wash her face before dinner, but gasped. Her reflection's features were pale, blurred, as though scrubbed by wind. Her cheekbones looked hollow, her eyes a gray mist. Heart pounding, she clutched the silver mirror and fled to Miss Thatcher. Althea, voice shaking, my face, it's changing. Miss Thatcher's eyes filled. The portrait, it takes what it sees. You looked into its eyes too long. At her mirror's edge, Althea's features flickered. She touched her forehead. No warmth. Fear clenched her. Can it be undone? Miss Thatcher shook her head. Only by facing the portrait with your true self and refusing to flee. Armed with her grandmother's mirror, Althea returned to the portrait gallery under flickering lanterns. The drape lay discarded. The portrait shivered with silent life. She positioned the mirror before her face and stared again at Evelina's eyes. At first, Althea's face wavered, cheekbones hollow, lips fading. Yet she held the mirror steady, remembering her grandmother's words. True sight sees past illusion. She whispered, I am Althea Grant, historian, daughter, friend. The mirror's reflection steadied, her features snapped back, clearer than before. Across the gallery, the portrait's paint trembled. Evelina's eyes narrowed and a low hum filled the room. Althea's reflection pulsed with silver light, and at the same instant, the portrait's painted eyes cracked, the first fracture in centuries. Paint flaked, revealing blank canvas beneath. Evelina's once perfect face began to dissolve. Althea stepped forward. You shall not claim me. She pressed the mirror against the painting surface. A shock of cold ran through her hand, and the mirror's polished glass, etched with her grandmother's rune, glowed white. The portrait's canvas peeled away, revealing only a pale void. When dawn's light filtered through stained glass windows, Althea awoke in her chambers, her face untouched, warm and complete. She found the portrait's frame empty, the drape folded at its side. Miss Thatcher greeted her with trembling relief. Miss Thatcher, you have broken the spell. Althea, Lady Evelina's sorrow was trapped in that painting. Now she is free, as are we. Althea collected the empty frame. In the library, she recorded the manor's true history. Evelina Ravensbourne, grieving widow who bewitched her likeness to preserve her youth and unwittingly bound her own spirit to paint. Althea left Ravensbourne Manor with the frame and her grandmother's mirror. She published Vanishing Canvas, the story of a portrait that erased faces and the historian who restored both memory and self. The empty frame was enshrined in the town museum, guarded by a silver mirror that bore the rune of true sight. Visitors gazed upon the blank canvas and, if they beheld their own reflection first, left with no fear of erasure. And in quiet moments, Althea's voice echoed in lecture halls. Art holds power, both to hide and to heal. To see truly, one must look beyond the surface and reflect with heart as much as eye. Thus, the tale of the vanished portrait passed into legend, an enduring reminder that while image may falter, the essence of self endures in the steadfast gaze of memory. Maribel Westwood was an antiquarian drawn to the uncanny. She purchased Grayville Hall at auction, its vaults rumored to hold wonders, and arrived on a mist-shrouded morning. The estate stood silent, its windows black like sunken eyes. In the servant's staircase, she found the attic key and climbed through layers of dust to the strangest room. Walls hung with fading tapestries, and in its center, on a carved oak stand, rested the vanished mirror. Maribel approached, heart racing. Its frame was etched with roses and thorn-like runes. Behold thyself and remain. She wiped the glass with her sleeve. Her reflection shimmered and then changed. She saw herself in an opulent parlor, dressed in silken gowns, her hair woven with pearls. Mesmerized, she stepped closer, fingers grazing the surface, and vanished. At dusk, Maribel's absence alarmed the local caretaker, Rowan Collis. He searched the attic, finding only the mirror's empty stand. On the floor lay her notebook, open to the last words she wrote. The mirror promises beauty beyond time. I must see more. A chill crept through him as he recalled the legends. Rowan tested the mirror once, just a glance, and saw himself at a distant battlefield, sword raised in triumph. He forced his gaze down, threw a cloth over the glass, and fled the hall, vowing to rescue Maribel. Rowan enlisted the help of Cassandra Hale, a scholar of arcane lore. That night, beneath a full moon, they returned to the attic. Cassandra produced a silver dagger inscribed with binding runes. Cassandra, we can open a small breach in the mirror, enough to pull Maribel through. But beware, the glass realm mirrors desire. We must not be tempted by its lures. Rowan nodded. Cassandra traced a rune circle around the mirror, then stabbed the dagger's tip into the glass. A crack spread, like lightning caught in silver. A gust of cold wind rushed through the breach, and Rowan heard Maribel's voice echo, soft, distant, insistent. "Rowan, free me!" Cassandra grabbed his arm. "Don't step too close," she warned, but Rowan could not resist. He leaned forward and felt the glass's surface swallow him like quicksilver. Rowan fell through a swirl of mist into an opulent parlor. Marble floors, velvet drapes, flickering crystal chandeliers. Maribel reclined on a silken divan, her face luminous with joy. "Maribel, you came. It showed me my dream life, and I stayed." Rowan embraced her, relief flooding him. Yet as he pulled her close, he noticed other figures in the shadows. Men and women in fine attire, their eyes glassy and unseeing. Their lips moved in silent conversations. From outside came a gentle chime, like a familiar bell. Maribel stood. "That's the mirror's promise calling me," she said, stepping toward a gilded doorway lined with mirrors. Rowan lunged to stop her, but she vanished through the arch, drawn onward. Rowan pursued her through a labyrinth of mirrored corridors. Each mirror reflected a different future. Cassandra as empress of a jeweled court, himself as a heroic general. Maribel crowned, wearing an endless adoration. The corridors twisted, disorienting him. With each false reflection, he felt temptation tighten around his heart. He stumbled before a mirror showing Cassandra in peril, drowned beneath ink-black waves. His heart seized with dread. Was she trapped beyond the breach? Summoning courage, he shattered the mirror with the dagger's pommel. The glass exploded, awakening row upon row of fallen dreamers as they screamed into reality. Rowan covered his ears, pressing forward. At last, Rowan reached the glass chamber, a domed room lined completely with mirrors. In its center stood Maribel before an immense gilded mirror. She ran her fingers over its surface, eyes shining. "Maribel, this is my destiny, Ro. Here I am, cherished forever." Rowan, "Maribel, these are lies born of desire. The mirror imprisons you." She recoiled at his words. The mirrors around them rippled, and their own reflections twisted into nightmare forms. Rowan as a chained prisoner, Maribel as an anguished queen. Cassandra appeared behind Rowan, voice echoing. "Cassandra. Rowan, now! Call her name, draw her away." Rowan reached for Maribel's hand. She hesitated, longing warring with reality. He said softly, "Maribel, remember who you are." The mirrors shuddered. Maribel's eyes cleared. Tears fell as she whispered Rowan's name. She turned and took his hand. The mirrors cracked, spiderwebbing toward the ceiling. Rowan and Maribel fled as the chamber collapsed in shards of silver. Cassandra caught them at the breach. Together they stepped back through the crack in the attic mirror. The breach sealed behind them with a final chime, like a distant sigh. Maribel sank to her knees, trembling. Rowan knelt at her side, pulling her into his arms. Cassandra extinguished the binding runes. The attic fell silent once more. "Cassandra, the mirror will lie still again, until the next time. Maribel, never shall I be tempted again, but we must hide it, or destroy it." Gravel Hall's mirror was sealed in stone, locked behind wards of iron and silver, its frame wrapped in veils of dusk-woven cloth. Rowan and Maribel left Dunswith, carrying only memories of love and the perils of vanity. Cassandra returned to her studies, teaching scholars the dangers of coveting impossible futures. But on moonlit nights, when the wind stirs the attic's latch, some claim they hear the faintest whisper of reflected laughter, the echo of glass meeting glass. Reminders that some mirrors do not merely reflect, but reach out, seeking to bind the heart of any who look too deeply into their haunted depths. Eleora Trent was a scholar of temporal prodigies, drawn to the pale glass by rumors of its uncanny visions. She arrived in Brightford on the eve of the harvest moon, journal in hand and heart aflutter with anticipation. Her first night, lantern aglow, she stood upon the riverbank, scanning the liquid mirror. "I am Eleora Trent of Westvale University," she whispered. "Grant me a glimpse of tomorrow's sun." The water rippled, then stilled. In its depths, Eleora saw herself, years older, gray at the temples, standing victorious before a lecture hall, her eyes alight with discovery. The image shimmered, then faded. Jolted back to the present, she gasped. Was this tomorrow's truth, or a path never taken? She tucked the vision away, determined to learn more. At dawn, Eleora sought out Finian Rourke, Brightford's weathered fisherman, known for skirting the pale glass's reach. He found her on the quay, cataloging river sketches. Finian, voice thick with sea salt. "You saw it, didn't you? The river doesn't lie, but it doesn't tell the whole truth. It shows what will be, if the world stays as it is." Eleora, "Then the future is mutable." Finian, "Aye, but knowing tomorrow can drive a mind mad, trying to force fate, best you tread lightly." Eleora pressed him. "What have you seen?" Finian's gaze darkened. He spoke of a flood, the Vale's crops drowning beneath ice-packed waters, a vision that came when he sought the river in the heart of winter. Finian, "I'd change nothing." "Didn't dare. Some futures want to be born." Hearing of Eleora's quest, the villagers escorted her to Mira Lysewell, an aged seer who lived in the Willow Glen. Mira's eyes, pale as moonstone, regarded Eleora with knowing calm. "Mira, the river shows possibilities, but its gift comes at a price. Your heart will weigh the vision against your hope, and if you try to bend the river's fate, your spirit shall break." Eleora nodded, unsettled. Mira placed a gnarled hand upon her shoulder. "Mira, seek not to change but to understand, then decide what must be faced." As autumn waned, Eleora made daily pilgrimages. At the rapids, where silver waters thrashed against stone, she peered into the frothing pool. The river refused to grant a future. Yet when the moonlight shone directly upon her eyes, visions came, a plague of night blight creeping across the vale, turning flesh to pale husks under moon's kiss. Shaken, Eleora fled. Could such horror be prevented? Or was the river's mirror merely a warning of a path some might unwittingly walk? News arrived of a sinister illness in neighboring Embermarch, symptoms of night blight. Brightford's council convened. Mobs demanded the river's banishment, burying its banks, damming its flow, believing the water to curse them. Finian rose in opposition. "Finian, the river's not the curse, it's our mirror. If we drown the pale glass, we blind ourselves to the future's warning." Eleora stood beside him. Drawing upon her vision, she pleaded, "Eleora, we can prepare, fortify our cabins, purge the sick before they spread it, glean cures from the oldest texts." Her words swayed the council. They agreed to heed the river's warning, not erase it. Under Eleora's guidance, villagers organized night watches guarded by torches, steeped in silver husk tincture, an herbal antidote discovered in ancient scrolls. Loom's Edge Infirmary was readied with purified water drawn from hidden springs beyond the vale. When night blight reached Brightford's outskirts, it crashed against their barricades of resolve and remedy. Sick were quarantined, caregivers clad in treated cloaks, healing baths bathed victims in twilight's dew. Each day, Eleora returned to the pale glass, seeking fresh glimpses, tides of hope where others saw only ruin. By midwinter, the vale's frost-silver birches shivered in cold gusts, but the illness was contained. Life persisted. Children laughed in snowdrifts, hearths crackled with warmth. The river's waters ran clear once more, offering visions of a brighter dawn. At the harvest moon's return, villagers gathered by the pale glass. Eliora looked once more into the river's mirrored surface. "I am Eliora Trent," she whispered, recalling her first plea. The reflection shimmered, her hair ungrayed, standing before a new generation of students, now herself teaching the wisdom of the river's warnings. She smiled, knowing some futures are forged by those who heed the mirror's truth. Years later, Elira's name echoes in Brightford's histories as the sage of tomorrow's glass. The pale glass remains untamed, its banks ringed by lanterns of warning, its waters offering visions to those bold enough to ask. And each harvest moon night, villagers and scholars alike stand by the river, whispering, "Show us our path, O pale glass, that we might walk tomorrow's dawn in light, not in shadows of what might have been." Thus the river flows on, reflecting futures yet born, guiding hearts willing to learn from its timeless glass.